Welcome to our Mary Greeley Primetime Alive presentation, Singing in Parkinson's Disease. I'm Vicki Newell, and I manage the volunteer program here at Mary Greeley Medical Center. As a reminder, if you want more information about Primetime Alive, to sign up for a program, or to sign up to join Primetime Alive, you can go to mgmc.org/PTA. All right, our presenter today is Dr. Elizabeth Stegemoller. Dr. Stegemoller is a music therapist and neuroscientist. She joined Iowa State University in 2013 and is an associate professor in the Department of Kinesiology and the director of the graduate program in neuroscience. Dr. Stegemoller's research focus is to understand the neurophysiology associated with the therapeutic effect of music in persons with Parkinson's disease. She has completed multiple funded projects examining the effects of singing in persons with Parkinson's disease and has over 50 publications in her career. In addition, Dr. Stegemoller offers several outreach programs for persons with Parkinson's disease, including weekly singing, dance, and boxing groups, as well as yearly events such as the Parkinson's Disease Singing Festival. Dr. Stegemoller is very passionate about her work and hopes that through her research and outreach efforts, she can contribute to the development of new and innovative therapies involving music for persons with Parkinson's disease. Please welcome Dr. Stegemoller.
Hello, this is a wonderful crowd. So I appreciate everyone coming out. I know it's cold and we're all getting prepared for the snow that's coming. So appreciate you coming out, and hopefully this will be somewhat of an entertaining talk for you. I know I've been looking forward to talking and sharing a little bit more about the work that has been going on now for 10 years. It seems like it's been a while. So what am I going to do today? So I'm going to start off by just giving a brief overview about what is Parkinson's disease. Just sometimes I think we kind of know what Parkinson's disease is, or maybe we know someone with Parkinson's disease, but just a general overview of what it is to get everyone familiar. And maybe you'll learn something new that you didn't know about Parkinson's disease before that could be helpful with someone that you know or a loved one. And then, of course, everybody's big question is why singing? Like, why would I even start to look at singing, right? And then I'll go into our original studies that we have completed and talk about the results of those studies, talk about kind of what we're working on right now and what's next. And then lastly, talk a little bit about how to get involved so that if you do know someone with Parkinson's disease, you know the resources that are available right here at Iowa State. So what is Parkinson's disease? So how many people know someone with Parkinson's disease? Raise your hand. Okay, that's pretty much about everybody in this room, right? So Parkinson's disease is actually the second most common neurodegenerative disease. So a neurodegenerative disease means that the cells in your brain are dying. What do you think the most common neurodegenerative disease is? Any thoughts? Dementia, or Alzheimer's disease, dementia, right? But we are, I say we, I shouldn't, maybe Parkinson's disease is slowly gaining on Alzheimer's disease. So in general, neurodegenerative diseases happen with aging. And in fact, aging is the #1 risk factor for developing a neurodegenerative disease, because just like all the other cells in our body, they also progressively die. So do the cells in our brain. And it's a particular loss of cells in the brain called dopaminergic cells, or neurons. And that happens here. So I'm going to get my pointer going real quick. So this is a larger picture of the brain, and if we want to look and zoom in a little bit, we have this area of the brain called the basal ganglia. It's called the basal ganglia because it's basal at the base of the brain, and ganglia is a set of neurons that, like a gang of neurons is what you would think of. They all do similar function. And you can see it's pretty deep in the brain. And when we look at where the neurons are dying, it's probably the deepest part of that basal ganglia. And that makes treating something like Parkinson's disease very difficult because we can't really get to it. We can't get to that part of the brain without going through other regions. Okay. And this part's called the substantia nigra, is what it's called, which actually means black substance. So post-mortem, or after someone passes away, if you look at that area of the brain, it looks black. And that's where it got the name substantia nigra, black substance. And so in someone with Parkinson's disease, when it's gone, you don't see the black substance anymore, and you see the loss of those cells. So when you lose those cells, they give rise to what we call our cardinal symptoms of Parkinson's disease. So number one, most people associate tremor with Parkinson's disease. Yep. How many people know someone with tremor? Right? So 20% of cases with Parkinson's disease have tremor. That means 80% of people with Parkinson's disease may actually not have a tremor. So there are other disorders or diseases in which you can have a tremor. So it's important to know that in order for you to be diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, you have to have 3 to 4 of these cardinal symptoms, not just a tremor, because a tremor could mean that you have a disorder someplace else. Okay, so just because you have tremor doesn't necessarily mean that you have Parkinson's disease, and if you don't have tremor, doesn't mean that you don't have Parkinson's disease as well. So it's important to kind of understand all of the symptoms that could be there. Rigidity, that's the stiffness in the neck, in the hips, and generally the rigidity is more central in the body, not necessarily like in the fingers or in the hands, all right? And that can help distinguish certain disorders as well. Bradykinesia, just like I'm in the department of kinesiology, which means movement. So kinesia means movement. Brady means slow. So slow movement. There's also akinesia, which is a lack of movement or no movement. Gait disturbances, those are usually short shuffling steps and a lack of arm swing. And typically that arm swing is going to first show up a lack of arm swing on one side rather than, so the loss of neurons will start on one side of the brain and then will go over towards both sides of the brain. So when someone with Parkinson's disease, you might just see one arm isn't swinging, but the other side's doing just fine. And then postural instabilities that would make them more susceptible to falls. That postural instability means they could have stoop posture, like what you see in the picture, but it might be stooped forward, but it could also be stooped to the side. So these are what we call our cardinal symptoms. But unfortunately, these are just the tip of the iceberg for people with Parkinson's disease. And so this you can see here is an iceberg, and the part that kind of sticks up above the water is that part of the brain, that substantia nigra, where those cells are dying. But what we know that is lying under the water is degeneration in a lot of other areas of the brain. And that's also what makes Parkinson's disease so complex, is that cells are dying in other regions of the brain, and often cells that are dying in these other regions are happening before we see the cells dying in the area that's causing these what we call motor symptoms or cardinal symptoms. So a lot of times there are some other symptoms that occur ahead of time that you might not even think of as Parkinson's disease, like loss of smell, problems with blood pressure, problems with urinary incontinence, problems with sleeping. Some people will say, well, that's just because I'm getting old, and may not think of that as Parkinson's disease. And then one day, all of a sudden, you have a tremor in your pinky, and you decide to go see a doctor because all of a sudden you have a tremor. When all along the way, this has been a natural progression of the actual Parkinson's disease, but we didn't identify it as Parkinson's until we had some sort of movement or tremor. In addition, this basal ganglia, that I talked about, where this loss is coming, connects with multiple areas of the brain besides these areas that are also having loss. And because of that, we have multiple other symptoms like we talked about, not only the ones that start at the beginning that you might not recognize as Parkinson's disease, but we also have other problems where we have depression, we might have constipation, increased sweating, we might see anxiety, lack of motivation, flat affect, right? Where the face kind of drops and you don't see as much smiling, and facial expression. Some people begin to have problems like hearing, where some sounds or specific frequencies or sensory stimuli are more sensitive to that. And importantly, we also see that we have difficulty speaking sometimes, excessive drool, difficulty swallowing, and respiratory problems. And these are considered non-motor symptoms, things that you may not think of like that, even though they are movement, we don't think of them as those cardinal motor symptoms. And these symptoms are actually ones that have the greatest effect on quality of life, and specifically problems with swallowing and respiratory control are factors that can lead, or the second most common, or I don't know if it's second most common, one of the common factors that lead to death in Parkinson's disease. Because if we have difficulty swallowing, we have foreign material that gets into the lungs. If you have respiratory issues, it means you can't forcefully cough that material out, which can lead to aspiration pneumonia, and that is a leading cause of death in Parkinson's disease. And not all of these symptoms respond to the current medication or surgical treatments. Not only do they not all respond, but they also don't respond fully. So just because you're taking medication doesn't mean that your tremor is going to fully go away. Or if you've had surgery, it doesn't mean you're going to walk fine. And again, it is a progressive disease, so it's going to continue to progress. And so the medication and the treatment is going to continue to have to be changed as the disease changes. So there still remains a need to find alternative treatments that have a pervasive effect. So the medication and the surgical treatments a lot of times don't often focus on our non-motor symptoms. They don't focus on depression, anxiety, swallowing, respiratory problems, right? These things that could have a major impact on quality of life and lead to death. And so we still need those alternative treatments that have the ability to affect all symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And that's a big ask, right? That's a huge ask, because when we think about Parkinson's disease, we need to think of it as like a cocktail of symptoms, because not every person is going to have the same symptoms. That's another troubling piece of the puzzle, is one person may have tremor, another person may not. One person may have anxiety, another person may not, may have depression. One person may have difficulty speaking, one person may have difficulty swallowing. So each person is unique, and each person has a different cocktail of symptoms, which makes it even more challenging to treat. So I believe, obviously, that one of the ways we could look at targeting all of the symptoms and keeping in mind the individual uniqueness and value of every person with Parkinson's disease is to look at the use of music in the treatment of people with Parkinson's disease. So, what part of music should we look at, right? That becomes the biggest question for me. And so I'll back up a little bit and tell you about a little bit why I got into singing, okay? So, when I was hired, I'll say my journey. So I did my PhD at Northwestern in Chicago, Northwestern University, and I was really into like music and movement and cueing movement in Parkinson's disease. And then I moved to do my postdoc at the University of Florida, and again, it was gait, walking, right? So I did upper extremity movement, and then I did walking, and again, it was more and cognitive impairment, and not really, it was kind of cues. in both of those cases, it was cues, but wasn't really music. And then I had a speech language pathologist that I was working with at the University of Florida. She came up to me. She knew I was a music therapist, and she said, so she specialized in swallow. And she's like, so do you think that singing could improve swallow? You know, and me being the expert that I was at that time, I was like, of course, right? Right, okay. But there was no research done on it, right? And at that time, there was maybe 4 articles on singing and Parkinson's disease. And so we decided to work together, her expertise in swallow and, my expertise in music therapy and Parkinson's disease, to put in a little pilot grant. So we did. And then, my funding at the University of Florida ran out. So I got hired at Iowa State, yay, as an assistant professor. And I got the grant that we had put in for. And so I transferred the grant to Iowa State. And the very first study I did here was the study on singing and Parkinson's disease. Now, I know there's some people in this room that come to my singing group and have been coming for a long time, and I have been running my singing group now for 10 years. But the secret is that when I first started, I thought I was going to run that study for eight weeks and then be done. Guess I was wrong. And the reason I was wrong is because of the community and the people with Parkinson's disease. Singing means so much to them, and it's not even in this area, but all over the world. And I quickly realized that as I started doing the research. So here's a little bit of a video. After a couple years of doing work, I quickly began to realize that singing was really taking the world by storm. La 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 la. Sing a song. Sing a song. Sing a song. Sing of the things ahead. Sing of happy, not sad. Sing a song. Make it simple to last your whole life long. Don't worry that it's not good enough for anyone else to hear. Just sing a song. La 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 la. So we had groups from Australia, England, Massachusetts, Tennessee. We have lots of groups in California now, Louisiana, Chicago, Illinois. So there's groups, Arizona. So there's singing groups all over the country and the world. But there was actually little, like I said, research on it. So in our Parkinson's community, singing was something that was kind of known to be beneficial, but the research wasn't there. So what have we been doing? So I did the first study. After the first study was over, I kept doing research and singing. So in that first study, it was an 8-week program. And then we also ended up doing a second study after that was in virtual. So I'm going to kind of show both studies together because we found similar results. And the methods for both were the same. The only difference is that the first study was in person and the second study was like a modified virtual program. So both studies were 8 weeks long. One was in person. The virtual one was a filmed sessions of the 8 weeks that was done up in Storm Lake. So with our extension and outreach at ISU, and they would show maybe not as big of a screen, but they would show the videos, and the group would meet and sing along with the videos. And the videos were of our group with Parkinson's, our singing group with Parkinson's disease. So it was of peers with Parkinson's disease. In the in-person group, we had 30 participants from across Iowa that was in 4 live singing groups. We had a group in Waverly, 1 group in Ames, and then 2 groups in the Des Moines area. All interventions were led by music therapists, and they included vocal exercises and group singing. So vocal exercises, okay, you ready? This is the interactive part. You can do it, even at home. So everybody's sitting up straight, feet are flat on the floor. You ready? You just take a deep breath, fill up from the diaphragm, and do a nice buzz of your lips. Breathing in. Pretty easy, right? All right, now I want you to do, ready? Right? Those are things to start breath control, right? Or we might do me, me, my, mo, moo, and me, me, my, mo, moo, and then we would keep going, things like that. Or ha, 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 ha. Pretty easy vocal exercises, right? But those are things that we work on for doing breath control. And then we go up in pitch. So we work on pitch range as well, and articulation. And then we will use what we call therapeutic group singing, where we choose songs that actually are used for a therapeutic reason, even though they're fun to do. So I'm going to show a video example of one. We haven't done this one in group for a while. Might need to bring it back out. Maresy Dotes and Dozy Dotes. We do that for articulation, and if you look at it, the pitch range as well.
Maresy Dotes and Dozy Dotes and little Lampsy Ivy, and Kiddly Ivy too. Maresy Dotes and Dozy Dotes and little Lampsy Ivy, and Kiddly Ivy too.
So working on articulation, working on breath control, working on pitch range as well. We often say we must lift the eyebrows, because the eyebrows apparently are attached to the back roof of your mouth. I don't know if you knew that or not. Not really, but it does help to cue it so that you lift the back part of your roof of your mouth, the palate. And if you lift that back part of the part of your mouth, or the roof of your mouth, those muscles that you use to lift those are the same muscles you use to swallow. So when we're working on the breath control, when we're working on using those same muscles, you're using the same muscles that you use for breathing, the same muscles that you use for swallowing. So it's like exercise for those other little muscles that we often forget about. And then usually at the end, or probably for the most part of this intervention, is participant requested music. I would say our favorite one is Joy to the World by Three Dog Night. You know, Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Yeah, I'm trying to think. And then, of course, Sing, like you heard in the video from the Carpenters, is another favorite. So we have all kinds of fun when it comes to participants selected. And I do think that they try to stump me every once in a while. That's their goal. So before this 8-week and after the 8-week program, we did measure certain aspects. So we measured voice outcome measures. So how their pitch range, measured how loud someone could hold a tone, how long they could hold a tone. Then we respiratory control, how forcefully we could breathe in, how forcefully we could breathe out. We did measures of swallow, which I'll show you a little bit more detail later, and then questionnaires on quality of life. So the results, the first ones I'll show here are maximum inspiratory and expiratory pressure. So inspiratory is how forceful you can breathe in, and how expiratory is how forceful you breathe out. So if you think you're going to cough something out, you have to breathe out forcefully. But we also wanted to measure breathing in. So this pre is before and post is after. And when we have low dose and high dose, we had one group that met twice a week. So in the low dose was once a week. So what we can see is that both groups significantly improved from pre to post singing. But there wasn't a difference between low and high dose groups. So once a week is sufficient for seeing significant results in respiratory control. For quality of life, again, we saw significant improvements in voice-related quality of life and whole health-related quality of life. So the direction, is dependent on the questionnaire and the way that you measure it. But again, we saw a significant improvement in quality of life. And again, it didn't matter if you did once a week or twice a week, but overall saw a significant improvement in quality of life. With our vocal measures, we actually saw some improvement in vocal loudness and pitch range, but it didn't reach significance. Vocal duration, though, how long you could hold out a sound, did significantly improve across all groups. And we still call that a win because it is a progressive disease. So I want you to think about this. It's 8 weeks. And so even over 8 weeks, when somebody is supposed to the disease is supposed to be progressing, we're still seeing improvements. And so most of the time in research studies in Parkinson's disease, even if you can see something holding stable and steady, that is like amazing. So the fact that we see it go up or get better and significantly better is even more amazing, in my opinion, which is slightly biased. So it was pretty exciting. For the virtual singing, again, same format, same outcome measures, very similar results. Respiratory control significantly improved, quality of life significantly improved. Our vocal measures improved, but we didn't quite hit significance. So what about swallow? So this is kind of what it looks like. So we take these EMG electrodes that measure muscle activity and we place them on the neck. And so then we have participants swallow water and then swallow pudding. So and then we record the muscle activity. And it looks a little bit like this. And this is a cleaned up version, okay? And then we can take this trace of muscle activity and we can calculate things like rise time, like how long does it take to go from here to the peak of that muscle activity? Or fall time, which how long from the peak to when it turns off. And then we also have like amplitude is how big it might be, and then of course area in the curve. So why might that be important is when you are turning a muscle on or off, you're holding that larynx or you're holding the airway closed. You're keeping it closed so nothing goes down into that airway, right? So the muscle so you want it to turn off correctly and you want it to stay on the whole time, right? So, and not turn off too early. Otherwise, stuff's going to go down into the lungs. So that's why we can look at how long did it take to turn on and how long did it take to turn off, and actually how long did that muscle stay on when they were swallowing. And this is an example of what it looked like. So this is a thin, meaning this is when they swallowed water, and this is when a participant swallowed pudding. So in which case, and this is pre and this is post. So which one was the muscle on longer? Top or bottom? Okay, how many say top? How many say bottom? Good job. The bottom one, after singing. So the muscles were turning on and staying on longer. And that was actually significant. And that's what that basically means. So the muscles were turning on and staying on longer. Is that a good thing? That's a good thing because you're holding it up, protecting it the entire time the swallow is happening. And so what we interpreted this as is that larynx is being elevated for a longer period of time and that airway closure is improved. And so this would suggest that singing protects against potential complications from swallow. Woo woo. Pretty cool. Now, this is my fun little introductory little note here. There was like a news station came over and interviewed me, and the lady, the news anchor, after we talked about this, she goes, so singing can save lives. And I was like, no, I didn't say that. I thought it was funny. So it was like an overinterpretation of the results. But if you want to think that, go ahead. So maybe. All right. And I just would like to take a moment here and just, I meant to say this at the beginning, but I would like to have dedicated this talk to Jackie here. She was a longtime member of our group, and she passed away last week. So she gave a lot of her time, energy, and even her intellect. And some of the studies that came from a lot of feedback from her. So after I completed that first study, what I noticed was that when we'd finish singing, nobody would want to leave. So I was like, okay, singing group's over, you know? And after the 8 weeks, everybody was like, so what are we going to do now, right? And that first study, I started with 8 people here in Ames. And I was like, well, you know, and I was new to Iowa State, and I was like, well, I guess we could keep going. There is this thing called extension and outreach, and so I can do this as part of my appointment, you know? So we kept going with the singing group, and we're still going. And now we have, 25 every week. It's a pretty big group now. But I thought, well, if we're going to keep going, since, you know, I have like a gold mine here, like, why don't I ask the participants what they thought about it, right? That's really something, right? That's a unique piece that I could capitalize on. And so we did a qualitative study, and participants basically told us they felt less stressed after singing, and they reported that they could move better after singing. And particularly Jackie here would tell me, oh yeah, I plan my grocery trips, I plan all of my regular outings for after singing because I can move so much better. And I was like, okay, well, we published that information, and then we wrote another grant and said, let's measure that. And so we measured motor symptoms, stress, and inflammation after an acute or single session of singing. We had 17 participants, and they completed 1 hour of singing. And then we had 8 participants that completed 1 hour of reading a book, right? And for this study, we obtained cortisol from a saliva sample. So right before, they got the spit in the tube, which is everybody's favorite, so that we could get saliva. And then we took a blood draw so that we could get markers of inflammation from the periphery, from the blood. And then we asked participants to do different movements like this that are normally done in the clinic. And we videoed those, and we had 2 neurologists that were masked to the study. So they didn't know that it was singing, and they also did not know that it was pre or post singing to score those videos for us. And so this is just video here that I'll show you right before and right after. So we'll start, there's no sound to it, so I'll walk you through. This is facial expression, right? And then we'll start with bradykinesia, the tapping. So you can see a big difference. It's not like perfect, but you can see a big difference between the amplitude and the speed between pre and post. And then going back and forth. Same thing, much faster after and bigger movements. Again, they're not normal, but they're better. Tremor. So I'll point your attention here to watching this foot. You can see a little tremor in the hands here that is gone afterwards. Again, as soon as tremor's here, gone over here. Standing up, see it's much faster afterwards. Turning and walking. You can see the arm swing much better, much faster, able to turn much better, less shuffling on the turn. and the postural instability. She will fall here and not fall there. So on this score, the score's improved by 12 points. When we look at improvements in these movements with medication, a meaningful clinical difference in medication is 4 points. So we're seeing in Jackie a meaning 3 times the three times that of the clinical meaningful difference of medication alone from 1 hour of singing, right? And she's on meds here. So to me, pretty amazing. The problem is that, again, remember Parkinson's disease is variable and each person is different. So keeping in mind, one of the things, we'll go back to the results. So that does show you that, hey, Jackie did report to us exactly what she said. She moved better after singing, okay? So what about the overall everyone in the group? So what we found is that cortisol did go down in our singing group. So less cortisol means, in general, less stress. It did not reach significance, but hey, we're okay with that, right? But a decrease is a good thing. Means singing is not stressful. I don't know, if I were to ask you to start singing right now, you might get a little stressed, right? Right, yeah, everybody's like, oh no, I'm not gonna do it. Okay, your cortisol just went up, okay. Right? But then our overall, when we combined all of our motor symptoms together, we did see a reduction in motor symptoms, but it didn't reach significance. But if we broke them out by category, we did see a significant improvement in tremor and a significant improvement in gait and posture. This still intrigues me because, like in the videos that you see, we are just sitting there and singing. There is no overt exercise movement like big gross motor movement. We are sitting and singing, and we are seeing improvements in effectors or movements that are outside of what we're actually working on. So you sing and tremor gets better. You sing and gait and posture gets better. As a neuroscientist, that makes me go, huh? Really makes me wonder what is going on. But still really cool. So for our peripheral inflammatory responses, we are still working on this data with a colleague, Dr. Kohut, but in general, we did see significant changes in IL-1 beta and IL-8 that were related to improvements in motor symptoms. So that maybe there's something going on with acute inflammation, kind of like you take ibuprofen and you see an acute change, there may be something going on in that system that's also impacting our motor system. I'm not really sure. Still trying to work out some of these details, and that's what makes me excited, try to figure out what's going on for our future studies. So that is our first couple of studies that we've done. And just to kind of give you recap those, what we have found is that singing improves respiratory control, swallow, and the voice, which would make kind of sense. Those are effectors from singing. We know that singing is not stressful, right? So you can sing. And influences peripheral inflammation. And most interesting to me is that it does improve other motor symptoms, including tremor, gait, and posture. So, what's next? Well, that's where we were, and then the COVID pandemic hit. And so things that we're working on now, because of the pandemic, we did develop a virtual singing program, and now all of our singing programs are offered in person and virtually. And during COVID, we also were able to complete 50 qualitative interviews again. And that came because we collaborated with all those other groups that I showed you at the beginning of the talk to do a virtual singing festival. And we recorded, and because we made those connections, we were able to do qualitative interviews from multiple singing groups, not just our group. So now we're currently putting those manuscripts together to kind of get a better idea of what singing is like for multiple groups, not just the group here in Ames, but what about the group in, Australia compared to the group in England, to the group in California, to the group in Tennessee? Are there similarities? Are there differences in how participants are responding to those? But we also interviewed caregivers, and we also interviewed the group leaders, so that we can get a better idea of what these groups look like. So going forward, when doing more research, so I can expand and have a better idea of how to move into some of these other groups that are doing singing. And that came about because of our singing festival. So I think it's time for a little bit of a break to see a little bit of what that virtual video looked like. We had 170 people in the community join for that.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just to live on. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for
So people with Parkinson's disease kept singing, and we can do it virtually as well. And so that has kind of led to continuing on with a couple different lines. So we wanted first to understand, we did 8 weeks, we did acute. So then we are now almost done. I think we might have just finished our last data collection. I think maybe it was on Monday, to understand the long-term effects. So all of those outcome measures that we kind of walked through before, we did it again, but we did this in over 16 weeks. So we had a baseline of no singing for 8 weeks, and then started singing and sing for 16 weeks, and we collected all these same outcome measures. So we have a control group of healthy older adults at those same periods. So we have a long-term effect to kind of look at all of these measures over a longer period of time. In that grant, we have another year to finish up those data analyses as well. And so that's what we're working on now. Of course, I have a grant under review to objectively measure those changes in motor symptoms that happen with singing. And that grant came about also because of the virtual component. So now we know that the virtual singing we did some pilot collection, and we know that using Zoom, we see similar improvements in motor symptoms after singing virtually. And so that allows us then to be able to take a participant into the lab, have them participate virtually, and then we can still hook them up to everything we have in the lab. So if we want to, because that was the challenge that I couldn't figure out. How am I going to measure gait at the First Baptist Church when I don't have my lab there? How am I going to measure EMG activity because it's not the lab? But because I can do a virtual session, then I can have them do the virtual session in the lab and can measure that immediately before, immediately after. So I'm excited about that because that'll give us that objective measurement of those motor symptoms. And then, I do all these studies here in Ames, and I love all of my people, but they're probably getting tired of doing all these research studies for me. I guess you could say it's a select sample of people with Parkinson's disease by now, but also I know that we need to expand, right? And again, this virtual component, that's why I introduced it in from the pandemic, really actually was a blessing. It allows us to, one, increase our, for research methods, but also working again with extension and outreach. We have a grant in to test the feasibility of doing virtual singing programs in rural areas of Iowa by working with extension and outreach, where we can offer the singing group at one of the extension offices. A county officer can hook up Zoom and everything and have people come into the office. They sit down, they click on Zoom, and there we are. I'll be at the piano playing with my group in Ames and lead them through our singing group, and they can join us from rural Iowa in singing. They can develop a community there and still have quality access to a singing group. And so we have a grant in to hopefully receive some funding to test the feasibility of starting some programs like that, which again will allow us to expand not only delivering services to those that have limited access to care, but also expanding so that we can have a larger sample to participate in research. So that's where we are. And where we're going. I do research in singing now in Parkinson's disease. Didn't think I was going to do that, but here I am. So with that, I'm just going to put this up here as ways in case you know someone or you yourself want to get involved and how to do so. We lead weekly boxing groups, dance, and singing. Boxing's on Tuesday, singing is on Wednesday, dance is on Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. at the First Baptist Church in Ames. For people with Parkinson's disease, they are all free. There is no charge. You do get to come hang out with my lovely students. They are all there, and they help with all of those programs. We have lots of fun, I promise. And they're free. We'll start again in February. And that's all I have to say about those classes, I guess. I was going to say, and then we also have a caregiver group that meets on Wednesdays during the time of the singing group, so caregivers can come, and they are a very supportive group for each other. And then we also have our educational program that if you're interested in, called The Journey Through Parkinson's Disease, that is through ISU Extension and Outreach. It is hosted 4 times a year virtually, and then in other various trained various extension specialists to provide the program throughout the state. And that is a program that I developed and work with Extension and Outreach to, again, deliver information about Parkinson's disease and alternative therapies and treatments to, again, people in more rural areas. So that is my email and my phone number. You contact me is the best way to reach me to get more information about any of these classes or programs. And if you're interested in research, whether you have Parkinson's disease or a healthy older adult, we will take you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I have a microphone. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and I will come around so everybody can hear it.
Speak into a microphone? You do. Okay, just from being exposed to the outreach groups with Parkinson's, I wonder if there's been a number assigned to the number of people that have been diagnosed with Parkinson's. Out of the genuine population, I see a lot of people that I would suspect are Parkinson's people. Have there ever been any kind of numbers assigned to the percentage of people in the population that may not have been diagnosed that do have Parkinson's?
So people that probably have it but have not been diagnosed. That's a good question. It's hard because they haven't been diagnosed. Yeah, my daughter. Just
general observations.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people out there that show a lot of the traits for
exactly
what I'm seeing from the Parkinson's just from the outreach programs.
Exactly. I see the same thing. And my children get mad at me because I'm like, well, that person probably, they're like, stop it, Mom. And I was like, I should just have a card and be like, here. So, yeah, I think there are quite a few people that don't actually realize that they have Parkinson's disease. And many of times they think a lot of it is because symptoms are similar to aging when it could be Parkinson's.
Nobody's ever assigned a number.
Yeah, no number that I know of, no.
What benefits can be derived from doing instrumental music rather than vocal?
Yeah, instrumental music. I'd say, as far as I know, there isn't any specific research on it, but I am a pianist, so I would say instrumental definitely would show similar benefits. There's a lot of neuro benefits for playing instrumental music. They've done a lot of research on just healthy people playing music and playing instrumental music and being involved has a lot of good benefits and neuroprotective benefits for the brain as well. I think some of the I think a lot of people with Parkinson's disease will tend to shy away from playing instrumental music because of the motor impairment. But that doesn't mean that you should. You should still continue to use it. So as much as you can, you should always keep going. Like it's so that if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you can play an instrument, just because you have Parkinson's disease does not mean you should stop. If you can play a sport, you should keep going to pickleball every day as much as you can. Just because you have Parkinson's disease doesn't mean you should stop. So keep going and doing those skills.
Is it true, like some other things, that even that attempting to do it, even if you can't fully do it, just even that practicing and trying the movements you get benefit from?
Yes, because you're still using those same brain pathways to practice, that even if you can't fully do it, then if you just don't do it at all, right? So you're still firing those neurons even when you're just trying to do it. And even sometimes if you have a bad day and you just go and you sit and you watch, you're still watching and you're still using those same neural pathways just by watching and engaging, even in that way, rather than just sitting and doing nothing.
So we've mentioned that in the population, there could be a greater number of people with Parkinson's. Personally, I do have family members with a history of Parkinson's. I'm older, 76, so yes, I have some problems or issues, I'll say, sleeping, constipation, I don't know what other, the whole list that you said, which could be age. So what what's possible for those of us that are kind of like that without the top of the iceberg symptoms of gait and so on, to see if we are on the early stages or possible or history of Parkinson's?
That's a good question. That's what everyone is trying to figure out at the moment. If there are any tests or diagnostics, that's the problem that we have in research. So if it helps any, there is a big push for biomarkers right now, and a biomarker initiative that's coming out. And neurologists are trying to figure out what that would be, what that would look like, so that we can actually get our general care providers to be able to look for those, just kind of like when we have to go and do our checkups every year, every 6 months, you get a blood draw. Is there something that we can look for in there that says, oh, maybe that is? I would suggest talking with your care provider to say there is a history. Maybe they're,
I have an excellent primary physician. Unfortunately, he's retiring, I think, for the last 25 years. And so I bring this up because I, again, had a mother that had some dementia issues. Am I starting to lose it when I can't remember names and so on? And he said, no, it's part of aging. Mm-hmm. It's, and I trust him fully. So I think he's probably doing what he can do or should do. But he says the Rolodex, it's just a lot longer to find the thing in your brain. You've got so much in there.
And what we use now is a behavioral observation to determine if it's Parkinson's disease. We do have a new scan, it's a DAT scan, but that is usually not something that just, if you think you have it, you go do it. It's after pretty much you've seen a neurologist and they're going down that road.
Not only do we have a lot more file folders, we have a lot more file cabinets. So first you have to get to the right file cabinet, right? And then the right drawer. And a lot more to go through.
I understand you have taken your message to Washington, D.C. Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, which part of D.C.? I've been to D.C. in different levels. So one has been to advocate. Actually, at the very, very beginning, I actually went with Jackie. And, we went on Capitol Hill to advocate for funding for Parkinson's disease. And I got to spend a whole day with her, or multiple days with her. And it was wonderful. So we went to D.C. in that realm. I've also been DC, where we have performed at the Kennedy Center, and have had lots of interaction with Renee Fleming. She's a renowned opera singer, so we're kind of famous. Yeah.
And all here, right in little old Ames, Iowa, right? Yeah, that's very cool. Very cool. If you covered this, forgive me. Did you talk about how long the benefits of singing last?
Yeah.
Number one, and number two, do you give homework? Like, do this once a day, do this, is there something like, kind of like giving a prescription?
I give no homework. I mean, but most people probably start singing those. I'm pretty sure most people still sing outside of it. Like once you get those songs going, I've heard a lot of caregivers tell me that their spouses sing a lot more around the house than they used to before coming to singing group. I mean, there's no homework per se. As far as how long it lasts, our students, you can see I have a ton of students and I can't do anything. This is my final shout out, but I have 11 graduate students and I usually have 20 to 30 undergrads in my lab every semester, and I can't do anything that I do without them. They are amazing. And they also do small research projects. So like I said, if you want to do research, we will have something because they're always running something. So I've had some students run some pilot studies actually looking at how long the effects last after singing, and after dance and after boxing. And what we're seeing, they've done studies out to an hour to an hour and a half past the singing, and we are still seeing that the effects are either going up or staying sustained. That's as far as we've gone because, one, it's hard to get college students to stay longer than an hour and a half after, and it's also hard to get participants to stay that long to be able to get, for test. And then you have the complication of then it's time to take medication. So how do we know that improvement is due to whatever intervention we had or due to medication?
Tim, are there any questions online?
Nope.
Okay. Any other questions here? I mean, we have her here now. Let's ask all of our questions. This is very interesting, and what great work that you're doing and impacting so many people. So, here we go.
Appreciate all the information you've given today. It's interesting. Is there any thought to evaluating the three combination, the different activities, singing, dancing, boxing, and showing results from that?
From all three together. Whew. Well, I'm sure I can put a student on it. We did have a study that the students had started to kind of look at the long-term effect of people who have been in outreach, and they were kind of following them for like 6 months. That didn't work out too well. The students weren't really well organized on that study. So, but yeah, it has been stuff that has been brought up. So a lot of our stuff like that is done by the students in the lab to kind of get some pilot data. So then I can then determine, is that a direction that we need to, is that where I need to go? Is that something to begin to look at? So, but yeah, I don't have anything substantial on the combination of all three. It has been, I could probably go look at the data, but I don't think I have enough participants to be able to tell anything. That's a good question.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all your time putting this presentation together, coming here today and answering all these questions. Such interesting information to share with all of us. And I'm so glad that you took your time to be with us. And thank you, everyone who came today to join us for the presentation. Just want to remind you, fill out your evaluations, those of you that are here in person, and please give us ideas for other program topics or speakers you would like to hear from. And want to remind you, our next program is next week, Tuesday, the 16th, 2 p.m., Common Infections and Appropriate Antibiotic Use in Older Adult. And then the next one after that is a little bit of a break, Tuesday, February 20th, Staying Whole in a Processed World. Let's chat about processed foods. So thank you again for coming out, everyone. Thank you for joining us online, and have a great day and stay safe and warm out there, everyone. Thank you.